this man, who is at the time, I think, 69 years old and married for 47 years, I told him, I said, listen, no one ever taught you the basics about how to be a good husband. I'm here to teach you. And he took out a pen and paper at age 69 and said, teach me. And he worked at it for a year and a half, whatever it was. They're in a tremendous place. Their marriage is great. I still speak to him every 2-3 weeks just to make sure everything's in check. Love and having a good relationship does not happen by itself. These people live together for 47 years. They already get divorced. You have to be ready to put the work in to make it happen. A lot of times in the beginning, everyone's very enthused and they're trying to do different things. And then people get very busy and their marriage sort of drifts to the back. They just go like, okay, we'll coast. Everything will just be fine forever. If you want to have a thriving, loving relationship, you have to put your marriage at the forefront of your life.
Welcome everyone to the special program, Chazaq's Torah Talks program. We have a special guest every single week. Today we have a very special program. We have a special guest, Rabbi Yaron Weisberg. Thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi. Sure. We have a very special topic tonight: the 3 steps to a great marriage. Before we jump into the topic, we would like to, Rabbi, if you could just give us a small background about yourself and the great work you're doing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in Great Neck. Went to Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael back in 1988, and after a few years back and forth, been living with my family there for the last 29 years. I've been teaching Chassanim for over 20 years. In the last 9 years or so, I run something called the Marriage Initiative, which is something that is trying to just educate couples more about marriage right before and right after they get married. And most recently, over the last year, Rabbi Benzion Schaefer and myself started a marriage mentoring program, which is we trained mentors to actually help chassan and kalas and newly married couples try to navigate the waters of being newly married.
Amazing. So everyone has their mnemonics. There's so many books out there. The 10 ways to do this. If we shrink it down to maybe 3 pillars, if you would say maybe like a 3-step plan, I guess maybe one at a time, what would you say is the first step in order to get on the journey to have a great marriage?
Right. So it's going to sound a little bit funny, but the first step is actually guidance, meaning which has nothing to do with the actual marriage, but from what I've seen the last 20, 25 years, it's probably the biggest factor in couples staying married and really being successful and having thriving marriages. In all other areas, everyone realizes that they need guidance. You go to sports, the younger players are talking to the older players. You go into Rabbanos, the younger rabbis are asking advice from the older rabbis. And suddenly when it comes to marriage, people think they're going to just, figure it out. But it's not true. Marriage is one of the more difficult tasks we have in life to make it work. Hashem gave it to us, like we read in last week's parsha, Lo tov yosam levado.
Yeah.
It's not good to be alone. So marriage is good. But just because it's good doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean you don't need guidance. And I think whether you get that guidance as a chassan and kala or newly married couple, that is essential. I call marriage a mashal for marriage is your teeth, where the people that go and take care of their teeth and go for regular cleanings, their teeth are usually good. Obviously, there's genetics, but overall, their teeth are usually in a good place. People neglect it for a little bit. Suddenly, there's cavities. And, if you fill those cavities right away, you'll also be okay. If you don't, it leads to possible root canal, which is more expensive, a lot more time consuming. Yep. And if you don't do that, then they have to pull your tooth. And marriage is the same way. The people that come in the beginning, whether right before they get married, after, both, and they get their cleaning, right in the beginning, they're usually okay. They do well. They need a cleaning every few months maybe, but they're usually okay. The people that didn't get any guidance, didn't get anyone to help them out in the beginning, suddenly they might start feeling a cavity or 2, 3, 4 years in. Again, if you take care of that right away before there's too much damage done, so then you could still have, a great marriage and things won't be too difficult. People that neglect it more, I meet couples married, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, you're already dealing with root canals, which are a lot more work and a lot more time consuming and a much bigger investment. And very often there's children and it's much harder. It's a much more difficult task. It could be done, but just like root canals could be done, they're hard, they're painful. And then unfortunately, some people neglect it to the point that the tooth needs to get pulled. So the earlier you get the guidance you need, the better. Everyone needs different types, maybe for some for longer, some for shorter, for different problems. But I have found guidance to be the biggest key to, having a long-term successful marriage.
Okay, so we need the guidance, but there's different sources of information. Like let's say you have in the news. There's real news. They call it fake news. You have so let's say a person, they might say, okay, fine, like in the dentist muscle. Okay, fine. Oh, my brother Google once that if you have this certain thing, okay, fine. Meaning, what would you say? Could you go through maybe some of the different sources of? Is it an older friend? Is it maybe someone can? Maybe it's their parent. Maybe it's not. Is that the wrong direction? Is it a friend? Is it a rabbi? Is it a specialist? What would you?
Right.
What source? What would you say?
So I heard from Rabbi Leichter a few years ago. He said you can never learn chinuch from watching anyone else, even if he's a great rav. You know why? Because you're not that rav, and his children are not your children. You can't just cut and paste. And the same thing is true with marriage. You're not that guy. Your wife isn't his wife. You can't just go and watch other people and just say, okay, I'll just do what he does. Marriage is a very personal thing. There are a lot of great books out there. There's a lot of great advice out there. And all of that advice is probably true for most people most of the time. But at the same time, there's a lot of personal advice that's needed. How to deal with very specific situations that you and your wife have. And that's something that you need someone to speak to about, to fill them in on the information in order for them to help guide you. Who should that be? It's the same thing as with everything else in life. Someone with a lot of experience who has a lot of, good reviews from other people that have gone to him. Going to your friend usually only has his own marriage. Usually going to parents, they're going to be biased. They love you. They're probably going to give you advice what's best for you, but not necessarily what's best for your marriage.
And a parent or friend, they themselves might need the help, and
that's definitely also true.
And they're giving you advice, but their advice already is coming from a place that they themselves need help.
Yeah. I've had people come to me for marital advice, and they're advising others, people don't know. So, but it's just very important, like I said, to find someone with experience and find someone that, is recommended by other people that was, helpful for them.
Okay, amazing. Step 1 down. Rabbi, what's our next step?
Our next step is taking responsibility, which, is a big problem. Nowadays. I just want to share a quick vort there from Moshe Shapiro, Zichron Livracha. He said that, America, it's a wonderful country, but there are very few responsibilities here. The only one responsibility that everyone has is taxes. The rest of the laws here are about rights. It's called the Bill of Rights. Everyone has a lot of rights. I have a right that you shouldn't make a coffee too hot that's going to spill on me. It's not my responsibility to be careful. I have a right that you shouldn't, do that. He said, if you look in the Torah, who is all about rights and no responsibilities? Chera, shotev, katan. Those are the people that are not chayv in any mitzvos. The Torah is all about responsibilities. It's all about mitzvos. Who do we say is not responsible? People that are just incapable. They're katanim. So Moshe Shapiro said, in a lot of ways, growing up in America has brought up generations of katanim, of children who say, I'm not taking any responsibility. I have my rights, and I could sit on my rights. I don't have to take any responsibility, or the Hebrew word is achrayut. So coming into marriage, if you're not going to take responsibility, that means what are you going to do? You're going to blame the other person. It's not about me, it's about you. And then what's the other person going to do? No. It's not my fault, it's your fault. And you have two people standing there, no one's willing to work. Everyone's just pointing fingers at the other one. It's doomed for disaster. The only way for a relationship to succeed is if two people come in saying, I'm ready to do the work that I need to do to make this work. And in fact, when I see couples, after I speak to them a little bit, usually after the first intake session at the end, I tell them, I say, look, I'm willing to try and help you, but it means you're going to worry about your stuff. You're going to say, what can I do to make this marriage better? Your spouse will say, what can I do to make this marriage better? No one's going to blame. You're worried about your spouse? That's my job. That's not your job. You have to do your own work. And if two people are ready to commit to their own work, then pretty much every marriage has a chance to succeed. And there have been plenty of times where people have not come back. When I've said that, they're not willing to do it. Sometimes it's been cases, a couple married over 20 years, it's just too painful. They're just not ready to work and invest or whatever it is. It's just, I'm not judging anybody. But at the end of the day, thriving marriage means two people who take responsibility for their stuff, own what they need to do, and continue just to work on that without looking over their shoulder and seeing all the problems of the other person.
If somebody's a natural, whatever, they're just playing ping pong. Whatever happens, they just deflect it. Well, I guess in marriage, or maybe we just passed the Sarah Smith Tshuva. We're talking about Tshuva. You have to take achrayus in marriage. What's a practical way that somebody who doesn't necessarily always take achrayus, that they could take achrayus?
Anyone that's coming for help wants to change their marriage. You can only change yourself. So if you really want to change your marriage, to go and look at the other person, that's not in your control. So the way to take achrayus is by realizing that the only way I can make this better is if I actually take achrayus and I work on making it better. Mm-hmm. I can't fix the other person anyway. Yeah. So if a person is coming for help, which means they sincerely do want to have a better relationship, then each person needs to realize, for me, it starts with me, because that's the only thing I can change in this relationship. Okay.
What's the final step?
So since we had to narrow it to 3, I feel like we're in the Gemara Makkas. It's like the tenets of Judaism until we get it down to 1. But we'll stick with 3. And I think the word I would use is connection. And I'll explain why. There's a lot of things written about Shalom Bayis. Ultimately, marriage is about creating a very close relationship to another person. And even if you have a peaceful house, and I've had many people with peaceful houses, but if there's no connection, that's not a marriage. It's 2 people running a business together. They do a great job. I had people call me up. We are great at running this family business together. Me and my wife, we're great. We just have no connection to each other, but we're great at just working everything out. That's not marriage. That's what the Torah wants. We make the bracha onto the chuppah, sameach tesamach, re'em ahuvim. The Torah wants 2 people who are in a loving relationship. And that loving relationship means connection. And that means you're going to have to do things in order to figure out how to connect to the other person. A lot of those things are very positive things. Rabbi Schaefer has brought to everyone's attention, whether it's date night, whether it's compliments, whether it's appreciation, whether it's calling the other person during the day and, asking about how they're doing. But it's things to develop a connection. And then it, from the positive things, it moves into communication. You can't connect to someone without talking to them. What's our proof to that? 3 times a day, we daven Shema Esrei. Yeah. That's our connection to Hashem. We're standing in front of Hashem. We call it Avodah Shebalev, right? So the same thing. You want to connect to your spouse, you're talking to them, but it's coming from the heart. It's coming from inside. One of the, I don't know who said this, I don't know where I got it from, but it's a play on words that sounds very Gemara-like. But the word for closeness in English is intimacy. If you break that up into 4 words, it's into me see. The way to get close is by seeing into the other person. The only way you could see into me is if I'm sharing myself with you. That's what's going to create the connection. That's what's going to create the closeness. Yeah. And one of the very important points is, people say, yeah, but what about little techniques to how to fight and how to get along with someone who's hard to get along with and all these types of things. So the pasuk says in Mishlei, al kol peshaim techasa ava, which means that if there's love, then all the things the other person does wrong, you'll care that much less about. We all see our people that have children, those that have children, they see what their children are doing wrong. And even though sometimes they might get upset, whatever it is, but at the end of the day, they love them. So they got a certain level of upset, it's worded down a little bit. Another kid does it, suddenly you're crazy angry, Why? Because I'll call Pasham Techasa Ava. It's the same thing is true in marriage. Everyone has faults. Everyone has things that they don't like 100% about their spouse. When the love and connection are deep, you care so much less about all of those things. I have much more important things to care about than this. Just to bring you a mashal from sports. When I was growing up, there was a college basketball coach named Bobby Knight at the University of Indiana. He was a Russia, and he, yelled, screamed, cursed, threw things at people, mamish. Why would anyone go play for such a person? The answer is I have much bigger goals. You know what those bigger goals are? I want to play in the NBA. I want to become a great player. And he's a great coach.
They want to win the NCAA championship.
Yeah, whatever it is. Exactly. So you know what? When I have bigger goals, I don't even care about the smaller things so much. It's the same thing true in marriage. I'm looking to build a loving relationship. Besides the fact I'll call Psham Techasava, but at the end of the day, if I have that bigger goal, I'm going to care so much less about the little things that happen during the day that, would annoy a lot of people. I have much bigger goals to worry about.
Saying so. Look at the global. Don't always look at every single thing has to be midas hadin. Oh, they did this right. It's
right.
50-50 scale. Okay, I gave this amount to them. They haven't reciprocated yet, so I'm waiting or whatever.
Right.
It is, stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And I guess to leave us off, can you give us maybe a few final message, maybe some practical message, some tips for everyone who's inspired and watching and they could apply to their lives?
Sure. I'm gonna say this point. I'm gonna speak about a story. I have a chavrusa that called me up 5 years ago. His parents aren't from, and he said, my parents are thinking strongly about getting divorced. Maybe you want to try to help them before they get divorced, because he knew I do this type of stuff. Why a not from couple living in America would want to speak to a rabbi in Israel? Probably because I'm cheap, but whatever it is compared to a therapist. But I said, sure, I'll try to help them out. Anyway, with Hashem's help, I figured quickly out what the problem was. At the end of the day, this man, who is at the time, I think, 69 years old and married for 47 years, I told him, I said, listen, no one ever taught you the basics about how to be a good husband. Your wife didn't need it until now. For whatever the reason is, now she needs it from you. And if you're ready to work at it and learn, I'm here to teach you. And he took out a pen and paper at age 69 and said, teach me. And he worked at it for a year and a half, whatever it was. I wish I could read you the text that his wife sent me for their 50th wedding anniversary 2 years ago. They're in a tremendous place. Their marriage is great. I still speak to them every 2-3 weeks just to make sure everything's in check. And it taught me such a valuable thing. Number one, love and having a good relationship does not happen by itself. These people live together for 47 years. They already got divorced. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to make it happen. And number two is that you have to be ready to put the work in to make it happen. A lot of times in the beginning, everyone's very enthused and they're trying to do different things. And then people get very busy and their marriage sort of drifts to the back. They just go like, okay, we'll coast. Everything will just be fine forever. I'm busy. She's busy. We know we're both busy. Everything will work out. Everything will be good. I'm not saying that couple's going to get divorced, but they're not going to have a thriving, loving relationship because neither of them are invested in it. If you want to have a thriving, loving relationship, you have to put your marriage at the forefront of your life. We all have time and we all have money for the things that are very important to us. All right? Some people more money, some people less money, but...
So you don't have time, you make time for this.
Exactly. Right. And having the money, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be, going out for ice cream or whatever it is, or taking a drive to the beach. But one thing is for sure, you will never have a great marriage if you are not ready to invest time and invest yourself and put this at the forefront and say, I am not going to let a day go by without making sure that me and my spouse sit down and have some quality time together. It doesn't have to be long, 20 minutes, half hour. I'm not going to let a week or two go by, without making sure that we spend more significant time together and make sure that we have that connection time. This does not happen by itself. Most marriages that are, in the 10 to 20 year stage that people feel their marriage isn't great, nobody was bad. No one was trying to do anything bad. They just sort of neglected it. They just, sort of just let it go. And then they wake up one day and it's like, wow, what happened? Like, we're like two people just on two ships, drifting in the ocean. And, what happened? The answer is just they stopped investing. They stopped investing the time. So anyone that really wants to have a good marriage has to know they have to put this at the forefront. They have to know they're going to have to invest time and effort into the relationship. They need guidance, they'll get it. But without putting in that time to make it great, then it's not going to become great. Again, you're not going to get divorced necessarily, and you might have a cordial, nice relationship, and you might not fight, but it's never going to become great.
Yeah, it's like you're on the what's it called, the escalator, or whatever. It's either exactly going up or down. That's right. That's it. I'm stagnant. What do you mean? Right. Yeah, you've worked on it in a month or 6 months. Right, or whatever. Yeah. But you're going backwards.
Yeah. You're going backwards, but a lot of times people don't feel it because there's no fighting.
Yeah.
But the relationship is slowly.
I mean, it's still like status quo. There's no nothing.
Right. There's nothing wrong.
No volcano. Nothing.
Right. Exactly. But you're waking up and you're just like, I don't feel a connection anymore.
Yeah.
And that connection is the essence of marriage.
Okay, amazing, Rabbi Weisberg. Thank you so much for
Happily,
joining us.
thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Baruch Hashem, I know that some of your shiurim are on Torah Anytime. How else can people reach you or get is it any of your articles or lectures or?
Yeah, I mean, I have a website, themarriageinitiative.org, so people could go there. They can get in touch with me through that. You know, in regard to finding things online, there isn't that much right now, but you know, we're working on it, and Rabbi Schaefer and I are working on some things together. So, you know, Mirza Hashem, hopefully there'll be more things in the future. Yes.
Okay, fine, amazing. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Natan Bahar behind the camera over here, Baruch Hashem, from Chazaq Media Team over here, the director. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Of course, I want to encourage everyone to sign up for dailygiving.org. A tremendous initiative, which is literally give $1 every single day and you can change the world. Baruch Hashem. I want to thank, of course, Torah Anytime and all the different platforms for streaming. And thank you for joining us.